Memphis for 9 years and the senior recruiter at Buckman for just over a year. She is originally from Little Rock and has lived in the city of Memphis since 2011. So I need to know from each of you how, number one, how has the Great Resignation impacted your organization, and how have you dealt with that?
So I'm happy to go first. First of all, good afternoon, Gail. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving us the opportunity to tell the City of Memphis story here on this platform. To answer your question, the way it's impacted us is truly been tremendous. Not only seeing the after effects of the pandemic, but from a numbers perspective, we saw our resignation rate go up by 42% year over year.
Wow. 42%?
42%. So we literally went from a 3.1% resignation rate to over 7.8 resignation rate in 1 year. And even though that's relatively low, to see that drastic of an increase in your overall turnover in an organization, especially an organization like ours, is tremendous. So the City of Memphis, we have 8,000 employees, 2/3 of which are police and fire. And we saw particularly the highest resignation rate related to police, fire, and our dispatchers. And so those critical frontline workers, as you mentioned, not only provide key services to our citizens, but are just critically important to us as a city and an organization. And so being very proactive in thinking about not only our recruiting, but our retention work has been the bulk of my work in particularly the last 18 months. And doing everything that we can to keep our employees safe, but also to let them know that they are valued.
And I'll say that the resignation on our side looks a little bit different because we are such a niche type of environments. We do chemical manufacturing for paper mills and pulp mills, leather refineries, that type of. So everybody that works in the industry, it's already such a small community, and we had a very, very low turnover rate to begin with. So we have lost some employees that have gone on to maybe find something new, a different path. So it's something that we have seen, and we have seen an increase in, but I think that we've been pretty lucky as far as some of the trends that we've been able to kind of stay out of.
And why do you think that is again?
Because we work in such a niche environment, such a small community of engineers that work in paper mills. There's only so many other engineering and paper mill positions out there. Not saying that we haven't seen resignations, but we haven't seen it on the level of a lot of companies in the United States have seen.
Okay, so what is generally your turnover rate per year?
I don't have that information with me. It was very, very low to begin with, so we don't have a number on it.
So let me ask you this. So you're saying that they are based on their expertise. So do they not transfer their educational skills to other industries, or do they just stay in the industry that you all have, that you're in?
They do and they can, and I'm not saying that they don't, but being such a small community that and Buckman is such a great company to work for as well, that we have not seen it on the level of other types of companies in the United States.
So you haven't had to do additional things like increase pay or offer other kinds of benefits to maintain your level of employment?
We have done some things to maintain our level of employment. I'm not saying that we haven't. I'm just saying I don't believe that we have seen it on the same level as other industries in the country.
Even in the technology area?
In the technology area as well.
Okay, all right. So Alex, you mentioned some of the frontline employees like fire and police, and you mentioned going from maybe like 3% to a little over 7% in turnover rate. So of that 7%, would you say that most of those employees were law enforcement and fire?
Yes, so we saw particularly the increase related to our police and fire and dispatcher professions. And so to really work on this is a two-pronged approach. So first is recruiting, and then second is retention. So on the recruiting side, we really doubled down on our messaging on social media. We created our own version of Instagram Reels, talking about the importance of jobs in public sector. We created a new slogan in partnership with marketing, really advocating for public service as a new era in serving in our community. And then we really focus in on more communication in terms of created a talent newsletter and connecting back to the community. So having more job fairs actually in the community, and being more proactive around advocating for why people should commit to service during this time. We also created a sign-on bonus program. So we created sign-on bonuses for $1,000 for part-time, $2,500 for full-time, and then and we recently discontinued that program. But for police, we still have a $15,000 sign-on bonus and a $2,500 sign-on bonus for fire. So we continue to focus in on creating incentives. We also have a $10,000 relocation bonus for police as well, and continue to really stress the importance of serving in our community and Memphis being a great place to work. On the retention side, the focus has been on, number one, employee engagement. So not only do we conduct annual pulse surveys or what we call connection surveys for our employees to understand what some of the key issues are, but I even dedicated a resource on my team who's purely focused on employee engagement and looking at those survey results and working with directors to come up with action plans to help improve employee engagement. So things like recognition days, wellness days, focusing in on flexible work arrangements and other programs to try to help bring about a sense of value and support to employees and managers. The second thing around retention that we notice is, and I firmly believe this as an HR professional, I've been in HR over 18 years. And one of the things I know to be true is that employees do not leave organizations, employees leave managers. So it's really important that you have strong managers who can build relationships with their employees and be able to understand what their key issues are with their employees and help to coach and mentor and support them. So we brought back our management one-on-one course and have focused in on team building, emotional intelligence, and being in a multicultural, multi-generational environment, and brought that about. I would tell you that from our learning and development team, we have seen our Myers-Briggs assessments, team building activities go up by well over 50%, as more and more directors recognize the importance of having engaged employees and having strong teams to help them with their retention work.
That's really good information. But one of the things that you said was about people don't leave companies, they leave management. And it's interesting. I had just read an article about 90%, 90 to 92% of the people who leave because of their management.
Mm-hmm.
And so you all have taken an extra step to make sure that management are better managers and have better relationships with their employees. And you think that has a great deal to do with the retention rate.
Absolutely. So that's where we're making our investment to be able to help better build relationships between managers and supervisors and their employees, and help with building that positive team culture that makes people want to stay. Because ultimately, even if you increase somebody's salary or give them a retention bonus, they are not going to want to stay if they feel like they're in a toxic environment or they're in an environment where they don't have career development or support from their manager. So we can do, some of the compensation things, which we have done, but we also have to invest in management and leadership as well.
So you're saying that compensation alone and benefits alone are not enough to maintain?
No, the research shows time and time again that compensation and benefit increases may have a temporary uplift in terms of engagement or retention, but for long-term gains, you have to invest in your culture and your managers.
Okay, so we talked about police and fire, and you talked about the incentives. So you all feel that the incentives and the pay that you are offering are very competitive nationwide.
So certainly with police and fire, we do compensation benchmarking studies. We know that we have still continued some work to do. So with police, for example, we committed in this past labor negotiations to a 5% increase this year and a 5% increase next year. And I can tell you that the mayor would love to do more. And we would love to not do more for all of our employees, honestly, where we know that they may not be as competitive. But that being said, we are a government entity. We do have resource constraints, so we have to work within the constraints that we have. It's important that we work on these other things as well, which is the career development, the benefits that we offer, the manager coaching capabilities, and all these other important components in terms of people's overall work environment.
Okay, so Jenny, you did mention that you have a small turnover rate and that you have a small community, and the professionals who work in your industry tend to like to stay in that industry. But are there things or benefits or what are some of the benefits that you offer your employees? Some of the is pay benefits, that additional things that keep them at Buckman, because there are other industries that offer the same kind of work that you have. So what is it that you all do special that keeps your turnover rate low?
Yeah, we offer educational benefits, I think, are probably the top priority, aside from pay. We offer tuition reimbursements, not only to employees, but also to dependent children of employees. So, something as a parent, for one, thinking about, okay, how are we going to pay for college coming up in a few years? We have that as an opportunity. And just the benefits that we have of, the growth opportunities in the office. For me to come in, I can say, I want to learn this. I want to be doing this by this time next year. I have a conversation with my manager, and we make that happen. I've done some trainings with some managers. Done some training with some managers, and worked on developing myself, which is something that not every company you have the opportunity to do. And also, I'm going to apologize that I'm on my last few days of maternity leave, so I'm not doing the call by myself.
Thank you for coming on, since you've just, thank you for taking time from you to come on with us.
Of course.
While you're on your maternity leave.
My last couple of days, technically it's vacation at this point, but
okay.
But Gail, I will tell you, that's an important point. So, we saw during the pandemic, a large amount of women, so over 2 million women left the workforce in the US due to the constraints of being a mother during the pandemic time. And I think we all witnessed, especially I have young children, I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. And during the pandemic, while we were at home, not only were we trying to work, but we also were chefs, nurses, teachers' aides, and housekeepers and other things, trying to make it work. And it was a lot to balance. And so I do think one of the things that employers across the country are faced with is, how do we help return more women back to the workplace, and how do we provide more policies and support so that women want to come back and feel like they have the support needed to be able to return.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I read a lot about what's going on in the world of work and the people who left the world of work, and I'm still trying to figure out how they're paying their bills. But a few articles I read was talking about how this has been not really good for women in the workforce, how it won't be good for them professionally, how that some of the gains that women have made over the years, now women have been taken back some steps professionally because of how they are working, how some are working now. Let me ask you this. So Jenny and Alex, Are your employees still working remote?
No, we are back in the office. We have a mix of positions. We have HR, we have IT, marketing, but we also have a lot of chemists and a lot of people that work out in our production facility that are mixing chemicals that we send out to our customers. And then of course we have people working on site at our customer facility, and those positions have always been on site. It's the more administrative office, HR, IT, marketing, those types of roles that just came back to the office recently. And we are working to make the return to office a little bit more exciting. We were completely from home, and then when I started a year ago, I wanted to be in the office. I am one of those people that likes people. I like to see their faces. I want that social interaction. So I was coming in most every day, and then we decided to come back on a hybrid type schedule through the summer. And then starting in September, we were back full time. And now we've, with our new employees and our employees that have been gone for the last 2.5 years, we want to make sure that we get to meet everybody. So we've had open houses for every department. I just got an email about one. Apparently they're having ice cream without me in the office this afternoon. So I'll survive. But adding those social activities. Next week I will be in the office, and we're having a community lunch with barbecue to get everyone together. And I think really putting the emphasis on the social piece as well. And we do have that support. Obviously, we've mentioned being a parent, and if I need to take care of my kids, or I have a doctor's appointment for one of them, it's not a big deal. All I have to say is, hey, we have this going on. If it's an all-day thing, I can still work from home. It's not that work from home has been completely taken away. It's just, okay, on a regular day, let's come into the office.
So Gail, for us, I would say, we, over 80% of our employees are essential workers that had to be on the ground during the pandemic. So for the majority of our employees, they still came to work, which is why our partnership with the YMCA and offering on-site student learning hubs for people to be able to have free daycare for their children. And I think MLGW participating in that as well was so important. That being said, and some of the employees that were working from home, they returned to work last year. So by May of 2021, essentially everybody was back in the office in some capacity. Of course, we had to adhere to CDC guidelines. So as we had different coronavirus outbreaks, different care issues, et cetera, we were adaptable and flexible in supporting our employees with whatever they needed. And we still have our flexible work arrangement program in place today to help support our employees as well. I think one of the most important changes for us was technology. And so the use of Teams, use of DocuSign, use of more virtual and automated processes really made a huge difference for us during the pandemic. And we still use those things to this day. So while people are in the office, there is a lot more flexibility in terms of when people meet, how people meet, and being able to use technology in a really inventive way to help accelerate that.
So I have read a lot about some employees across the country having employees with, do a push, they just kind of push back on going to returning to the work full time, even though more and more companies are doing it. And you still do have some people who are working remote, but there was some pushback. Did you all have any pushback at your organizations?
We certainly did. We had some employees, I wouldn't say a whole lot, but we definitely had some. And once again, if there are medical reasons or childcare related reasons, we definitely tried to work with people in terms of providing the right level of accommodation for them. But, because particularly we're a government entity, a lot of our work is working directly with citizens of certain entities. And so having people in the office is important for business continuity reasons. And we try to stress that as well. But I think all employers were faced with that discussion of how do we keep our business going and accommodate our employees where we need to.
Well, a lot of companies are moving toward automating some of these jobs out. I mean, some people, when they return back, their jobs won't be there when they try to return back. So Jenny, did you all have any pushback?
We did have some pushback because, of course, you get comfortable staying at home, and it's so much easier to get up and go to your dining room than it is to sit in traffic on 385 and 240 sometimes. But for the most part, with what we are doing, again, most people don't have a science lab and event hood set up in their living room. So it was already where they were in the office, working in the building at least part of the time anyway. So that made it to where we had less pushback than we could have had.
Okay, so kind of going back to the different professions, the quit rate for many professions basically was in the hospitality industry, the healthcare industry, and retail industry. And also there was some professions that moved around more than others, like technology. So we talked about that, Jenny, at Buckman, but Alex, did you all have people moving in and out in the area of technology, which is an area, well, I just read that they are laying off a lot of people in the technology field, but they're raising salaries for those who are not being laid off. So how did you all get impacted in the area of technology at the city?
Great question. So our IT division saw very little turnover, honestly, but I think we did see that pressure related to salaries because of just what's happening in the labor market. And so, everything from, looking at our jobs a little bit differently. We actually made a concerted effort to expand our full-time employees in that, so moving away from not having as many contractors and having more full-time employees, and really selling the idea around career development and business continuity by expanding our full-time employee base. We saw that as being an important effort, and I give huge kudos to our IT director for really thinking ahead and wanting to see how she could bring more stability to the IT organization, especially given what's happening right now in the labor market.
So have either of you all seen a lot of retirements? One of the things that constantly come up is that we have a high number of the population who are baby boomers. And so as they have gotten older, many of them decided to retire during the pandemic. And so did you all see a good number of people in that particular age range, that group of employees, baby boomers, retire?
I did with Buckman. We had quite a few retirements. These are all employees that have been with the company 25, 30 plus years. And, it was...
That's okay, we understand.
It was their time to, be ready to move on to something else and, retire. So that's where some of our movement within the company came from. And we were able to, promote employees that had been performing and doing a good job, and then, fill in those roles and take a step back and say, okay, now that we have moved this person here and this person there, what are our needs? And, reward our employees for doing a good job with us in that way.
So with the city, you all have a good number of people who've been there, 30 years, 40 years?
Yeah, so our average tenure is 13 years. And actually, I was surprised. So 13? Our 13 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And so I was surprised that our retirement rate only went up by less than 1%. So we actually didn't see a huge increase in retirements. What we saw is this huge jump, as I mentioned, 42% on the resignation rate. And that's really what was the component of driving our turnover up. In fact, we saw the average tenure of someone who was leaving us was 5 years. So it was clear to us that it was more early tenured employees that, and you could argue skewing younger, that were leaving our organization over the last couple of years. So we did not see a huge increase in our retirement rate.
Okay, so it's interesting as you mentioned, people who, folks on average have been there 5 years. They tend to be younger, but even pre-pandemic, one of the things that I saw was a lot of young people. They are not really loyal to companies. They are loyal to their professions. As years and years ago, people were really loyal to the companies. You see a whole lot less of that. But a lot of young people, whether it's pre-pandemic now or a post-pandemic, that a lot of the young people do change jobs a lot. So, but you wouldn't really tie that to anything that's tied to the pandemic. So
I think
if there were 3 things that you could do to keep young people, what would they be?
So the first thing is double down on career development. I think what we're seeing is the reason why young people move around. And when I say young people, I'm particularly talking about millennials and Gen Zs. And it has to do with them having, bigger aspirations related to their career. Also wanting to have different types of experiences. And so, the organization who can think about job expansion, job enlargements, promotions, lateral moves, and other things that can really help provide a fresh look and different experiences for their employees is the one that's going to be able to keep more young people there. So I can tell you within HR, we've had relatively low attrition. And a part of it is because I've been very big on job swaps, job enlargements, stretch assignments, cross-functional teams, just trying different things to give people new experiences so they feel that they're growing in role and growing in impact. And the research shows that particularly the millennial group, very focused on this idea of impact and making a difference. I also think we're in this new Instagram, LinkedIn world where people want to be able to show their friends and family what they're doing. And so creating opportunities for people to engage and to be out in the community. I know we've doubled down on our diversity and inclusion efforts in our employee resource groups and having more events so that employees can come together and do things in the community. And we see that making an impact and helping us as well. So making those investments around career development, employees being able to volunteer and do things together in a belonging way, all of that helps.
Jenny, I'm going to ask you this question, then we're going to move to some questions from our audience. So Jenny, what number one, have you seen those employees? I know you have a low a rate of people leaving, but those who have left, were they young people? And if they are young people, what are some things that your company does to maintain youth in your company?
So I believe the majority of the people that I've seen leaving have been middle-aged to older. We have had some younger people leave as well. Maybe they were offered a position that was just exactly what they were looking for. A story of somebody that left us last year had originally wanted to live in a different area, and they had a position come open for them in that area, and they hadn't been with us long, but of course they took it. And it's one of those moves that I couldn't be happier for them, because I know that's exactly what they wanted. And I know a lot of younger people too will take new positions more often than the previous generations for maybe a small increase in pay to work their way up the ladder faster. And it makes perfect sense. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I just wanted to know, what are some things that you all would do to maintain youth in your company?
Okay, right. And one of those is campus recruiting. So when we go out, we want to go to the schools and try to get people right out of school, fresh out of their degree, in some of these roles to still continue to have a younger population of employment in our office.
Okay, all right. So, okay, Alex, we have a question. What type of employee response rate to the pulse or engagement survey did you get?
Great question. So, and I don't have the exact data. If I recall, it was for the last one we did in 2020. It was roughly 900 employees that responded. So a little less than 10% that, or a little over 10% that responded to our survey.
Okay, so this question you may have already answered, but what are some of the reasons given for resignations?
Great question. So number one, career development. So looking, and sometimes they describe it as promotions, but it's career development, looking for career opportunities. Number two is related to pay and looking for a higher pay increase, which in many ways I see the career development and pay somewhat going hand in hand together as being the two top reasons why people leave.
Okay, and so Jenny, what were some of the reasons, if you all do exit interviews, what were some of the reasons given for your employees leaving?
Yeah, employees would still leave because of pay, even though our pay is competitive. In a time like this, everybody's trying to be is just more competitive than the last guy.
Well, I've lost a couple of employees in one of my areas, well, two of my areas, and one left, both of them have moved up professionally, and both of them, I assume she left for more money, but another one, she left, she got a $20,000 raise, and she's young. So if I was her mother and she had an opportunity to move up to leadership and to get a $20,000 raise, I probably would have suggested to her to take that move. So those are some of the reasons. And one was young, 32, and the other was in her 40s. So that wasn't really tied to any age. So this is for Kate. Oh no, this is Kate with Fox 13. Customers want to pay their bills in person. Is there a way that they can do that before officers? Or okay, so we're not dealing with that right now. We're dealing with Kate. You can send us a email at media@mlgw.org and we'll answer any question you have. Okay. Any other questions relating to today's topic?
And Gail, can I make a comment on that?
Okay.
So I think one of the things that, because we're seeing this focus around pay and career development, it also means, particularly for us in government entities, that this idea around pension being an attractive benefit has now changed. So for a younger demographic, they don't plan to stay longer than 5 years or 10 years. They are looking for the most expedient path and getting different experiences. So the way that we have to look at retention for them is different. And we can't really hang our hat just on pension. We have to talk about the career opportunities, the stretch assignments, the impact, the service, the culture, all these other things, because they literally do not plan to be here that long. And I think that that's okay, right? That is, everyone has the right to determine how they want to work and when they want to work. And everyone has different life circumstances. As an employer, though, I think we do have to respond to that and think a little bit differently about how do we support individuals who want a different type of work experience.
Well, responsibility as well. It's difficult to continue a lot of the work when your turnover rate is high. But I kind of do wonder, as young people do change jobs every 3 to 5 years, what is their look or focus on retirement when they leave the workforce? When they do they never leave the workforce? But what kind of income would they have when they get in their 60s, in their 70s?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, right? Because what we're seeing is more and more people who are over the age of 65 that are still working, even if it's in a part-time or some consulting type capacity. So I do think that this younger generation may not expect to stop working, that they may expect that maybe the way they work looks different. And also, I think the way they look at retirement, they see their IRA or their 401k, and they recognize that the way that they're going to retire is going to look different than their grandparents or their parents. So they may be planning for it differently. We're also seeing, of course, the maternity rates changing for our country as well. So people are delaying having children longer. So I think there is a question about, what does it mean in terms of the next generation and how even maternity will look and children will look in the future as well. And this generation's, this particularly Gen Z generation is making some different choices in terms of that too.
Jenny?
Yeah, and I completely agree with young people and retirement. It's even, I'm 36, so I'm not exactly retirement age, but I'm not exactly young anymore either. And retirement is something that still, it seems so far off. Like, why am I thinking about this already? And I feel like a lot of young people are kind of in the same school of thought as I am still, that it's so far off. They haven't started to plan for that. But we do offer, we have our 401k plan with a great matching program, for anyone that is thinking about retirement in their future.
I left, this is my second time working at Memphis Light, Gas and Water, and I started at Federal Express in January 1984. And when I started there that many years ago, one of their focuses was to continue to focus on communicating to employees about retirement, making sure they knew that the 401k was available, and that Federal Express did a matching of the 401k for their employees. They felt like they had a responsibility, because at that time they felt employees really didn't start thinking about retirement until they got into their 40s. But so do you all see that today? Is it maybe when they're in their 40s they start thinking about retirement, or they just are not thinking about it till they maybe 50s? I don't know. But I do know that Federal Express felt that was a responsibility of theirs many years ago. I don't think they feel that way today, primarily because I don't the private sector is looking at retirement and pensions for their employees entirely different today than they did many years ago.
Absolutely. So my previous lives, when I look at other companies I work for, they absolutely felt that sense of responsibility. And so there's a large amount of focus in the new employee orientation about the 401k and the matching, and really encouraging people to contribute so that they could get the maximum matching contribution from the employer. On the public sector side, it's interesting because we automatically deduct that 8% for people to be a part of our pension plan. And that's because they don't receive Social Security when they have a pension plan option. And so it's a different conversation about, well, you are in this pension plan if you come work for us. And so this is what it can mean for you in the long term if you stay through the vesting period. So it's a different type of conversation. I will tell you that the younger the employee is for us on the public sector side, the more explaining we have to do about why they have to contribute this 8%, but they don't have a choice, and why it's important. And so we have found it's important to double down on our communication and provide more information on why the pension program is important.
Is that because they don't think they should have to be made to participate?
Yeah, I think that there's this thought that I should have a choice. I should have a choice, and I shouldn't be forced to. And our thought is, well, just like with Social Security, you don't have a choice. You have to make this contribution. And so, our space is the same way. But I think that education about how, whether it's Social Security or pension plans work, and why it's important to make that investment in your retirement is important. And employers do have to really focus in on providing that. It's not something that students, particularly in college or even high school, naturally get that in their normal education. So once you get them into your organization, you do have the responsibility to educate them more.
Okay, so one question we have is for Alex and Jenny. How would you describe the culture at the City of Memphis and Buckman?
So this is one of my favorite things to talk about on interviews when I'm talking to candidates, because I came to Buckman understanding what the culture would be like, and certain things about the culture were non-negotiables for me. And it's all about how we give back. If I'm going to work for a company, I want to work for a company that will give back in any way. So, we volunteer. Our department went to the Mid-South Food Bank and packed up backpacks earlier in the summer. And we also support a Boys and Girls Club near our offices, where we provide tutoring, mentorship, meals. Who better to get help with your homework than a bunch of scientists and engineers and people of that. So it's great. And then we provide school supplies to students in the areas as well. Going back to school in August, we had a school supply drive for them as well. But another kind of aspect of that, outside of just the giving back, is how everybody, no matter who you are within the company, knows who you are, will stop, talk to you, say hi. I know it's a cliche term, but it does really feel like a family. And for me, I had made a pretty big announcement. I'm sure y'all probably know what that was. And I was walking down the hallway. I had not met one of our members of senior leadership yet. And I was walking down the hallway wearing a mask because of COVID. He was wearing a mask as well. And he recognized me as somebody he didn't recognize. And he stopped and introduced himself to me. And other companies I've been at, it's like, oh, you don't talk to the people in the C-suite unless you absolutely have to. You let them go. They're untouchable. And just the fact that I'm comfortable walking up to anybody in this organization and having a conversation, and they are welcome and open to it, that is something that will keep me at Buckman as long as they will let me stay.
Okay, Alex.
So Gail, the City of Memphis, and you talk about any government entity, there's a unique cultural aspect that goes on. So because you have, I would say 80% of our employee base that are civil service, which means that they have civil service protection, and in most cases, they plan to be in their roles throughout different administrations. There's a certain culture that's developed through that. And so when I first came here, I immediately noticed the relationship orientation in our culture. So everything is about family and relational. But there's also this idea that, particularly for us, 2/3 of our workforce are police and fire. And so there's separate subcultures within the paramilitary organizations that we have with police and fire as well, in terms of their protocols and how they make decisions and get things done. But in all aspects, I think universally, we are very relationship oriented and service oriented in that way of wanting to work and do right by the city of Memphis. From an administration standpoint, so we talk about new mayors coming in, I think different mayors have different focus areas or different cultures that they aspire to develop while they're there. Our Strickland administration has focused in on innovation, collaboration, service, and accountability, and really put our emphasis on things like database decision-making. So we have a monthly KPI meeting where we talk about the most important metrics for the city and how we can move the needle there. We have a focus around innovation, and we even celebrate it when people come up with new ideas and new ways to approach old problems. And then we have a real big focus around cross-functional teams. So the pandemic was a perfect example where we had multiple different divisions coming together, looking at how to solve some of the toughest issues related to the pandemic. And we've had several initiatives like that where we have broken down silos and really force people to work together, or ask people to work together to solve hard problems. And so that's the culture that I would say this mayor has really been focused on, but different mayors have different perspectives.
And I agree with that, which may change every 4 to 8 years. So this is a question from Kerry. He wants to know, or Kerry wants to know, what is the retention rate for college degree employees versus non-degree employees?
So I actually don't have that data, but what I can say is by, if you will, job function, that's where we've seen, a higher attrition rate based on a certain. So, for example, we saw a 20% resignation rate with our dispatchers in particular, and however, in HR we saw more like a 7% resignation rate. So it does vary by profession, but I don't have the data by degree.
Carrie? Jenny?
And I actually don't have that data either, just based on the types of positions that we have with chemistry and engineering being automatically that you would need a college degree for that. It's hard to get those numbers.
Okay, so one question is, has your agency considered rewarding employees who have decided to stay with the company rather than move to advanced roles?
So for us, we actually just launched a retention bonus program. We had our first experience with retention bonuses with our police division in 2017. And with the increase in the resignation rate with both police and fire, we expanded our retention bonus program to them as well as dispatchers. So we recently had an open enrollment for it where people could sign up for a 2-year agreement where they get a 9% bonus each year for 2 years, or a 5-year agreement and they can get a 9% bonus for each year for those 5 years. And so we literally had almost 4,000 people sign up for the bonus program between police and fire. And so it was pretty significant to get that commitment and once again, stability for our police and fire organizations.
Jenny?
I think that's great that y'all offer that. We don't have anything like that. Of course, we have a much smaller organization. We have about 1,700 employees in North America. So a little bit different for us.
Okay, so another question is, has your firm thought about offering more vacation time to older applicants to attract and maintain them and retain them?
Our vacation policy is really competitive anyways. I thought when I started with the company that I had negotiated something, but we actually give 3 weeks to everybody to start. And after you've been with the company for 5 years, we go up to 4 weeks and so on. But I think we offer more than a lot of companies in the area to begin with.
Okay.
So we recently actually added more vacation days. So we eliminated our bonus day program, which was focused on receiving days off based off lack of sick leave usage. We removed that program and just added 3 more vacation days to our vacation accrual. So now people get a little more than 2 weeks of vacation starting off with us.
Wow. So do they have to work a year to get their vacation time, or do they accrue it month by month?
They do accrue it month by month, but they get the full benefit on an annual basis.
So when they first start working, they already have this time.
It takes the first 6 months for them to get their first, essentially their first 5 days.
Okay. So the next question is, it's kind of a comment. I think keeping younger employees' attention is one of the keys to retaining them. Cross-training will be a good method to retain non-degree employees because their pay can increase. Because sometimes in some positions, if a job doesn't require a degree, the salary range tends to be lower than employees with degrees. Their salary ranges tend to be higher. And also, depending on what your degree is, your salary range, right? Some in business, some in engineering, their salary ranges may be higher. So I think Carrie is asking if we find a way to cross-train and make education experience somewhat equivalent to education to increase their pay. Have you all considered anything like that? Or do you all even have that as an issue?
Yeah, we do offer kind of the experience equivalency for certain positions to help, but I think this idea around we have a tuition reimbursement program, we have internal professional development programs, we have a student loan contribution program, And so, for police and fire in particular, we have education incentives where you can get up to 7% of your salary if you obtain a bachelor's degree, 10% if you obtain your master's degree, particularly for police. So we definitely do have different programs to try to encourage that education attainment, and we'll seek to increase people's salaries based on them having new certifications or new skills that help expand their scope of responsibility and what they can do in performing the job. I do think that there's an onus on the employee to be thoughtful about how they want to grow themselves. And certainly companies can provide resources, but employees also have a responsibility to investigate and determine where they want to go.
And so making the educational, the tuition reimbursement available to them, they can get additional education or even change their educational degrees, should they choose to do so.
Absolutely.
And I will add to that regardless of education backgrounds, I have had employees that want to move from one department to another, and maybe they don't have exactly the experience that we need them to have right now to fill the open position, but we have made offerings to let them do some cross training and learn that department. And the next time that there is a position available, that they're more ready to fill the role.
So do you all have rotation programs?
We do not.
Alex, do you have a rotation program at the city?
We don't have a formal rotation program, but we have had people job shadow, participate in job swaps, or even stretch assignments where they take on a project in another division or another area that is different from their own. And during the pandemic in particular, we had some really interesting examples of leadership. For example, my learning and development manager took on contact tracing for the City of Memphis. One of my HR managers ran a vaccination site. And so we often are looking for opportunities for people to stretch and be willing to contribute, especially towards some of the bigger initiatives that we have as entities.
Okay, so we are, I don't see any more questions. Cynthia, do we have any more questions?
No, ma'am, I don't see any more.
Okay, so as we wind down, Jenny and Alex, what are some final words or suggestions or tips that you would like to give those in the workforce, particularly people in business, about retaining and recruiting employees during this time of people leaving the workforce?
For me, with recruiting, I want to make sure that I give every candidate an equal opportunity, the same opportunities when I am sourcing, whether they have applied for the position, whether I've gone out to say, hey, I know you're working and you've not expressed interest in our company at all, but do you want to have a conversation? You're making sure that I'm going down all avenues and having real conversations with all of my candidates and giving them the exact same opportunity as far as the questions that I'm asking and where we go from there.
So, Alex?
So I think my advice, I have two pieces. So one is, this is a unique time where you can really build and develop your own talent for your organization. And so I would encourage employers to be thinking about how can they connect with high schools? How can they connect with those who are the hard to employ, those different types of backgrounds, et cetera, and really getting creative about how to bring in people who may traditionally not be thinking about your organization, but really have a good heart of wanting to serve or wanting to have a chance. And so this is a great opportunity in labor market to give people a chance and to invest in professional development, to educate and support people, especially people who wouldn't traditionally come to your organization. And then secondly, I would tell employers, you have to double down on manager capability. And so if you don't have a good manager training program, this is the perfect time for you to invest in that and to really invest in your managers. Because after you work so hard to recruit someone, you don't want to lose them because they have a bad management or supervisor experience. And so it's worth it to make that investment and your managers and help to provide as much support to them as you can.
Okay, so I want to thank Alex for being with us. She's the Chief Human Resources Officer for the City of Memphis. And I want to thank Jenny for being with us and sharing information. And she's a recruiter in Memphis for Buckman. And Jenny, before we leave, you must show us your baby and introduce her to us. You almost, okay, let us see her.
This is Elle. She's 8 weeks old yesterday, and we're soaking up our last few days of maternity leave until I am back in the office on Monday. But little plug for Buckman here. I feel like I've had a great support system this whole time, and even with the going back to work on Monday, all the first day of daycare feels, I know that everyone's gonna be there for me, and it makes a big difference going back to a company that I'm happy to return to.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate you coming on with us and sharing your baby with us. And I want to thank everyone for being on with us today. And we will see you for the next Memphis I Guess Water Power Pivot. Thank you, everyone.